do is called Conversation with the CEO. We want to say hello. We appreciate you for turning us on again and coming back to see us. We always want to ask you to do one big thing for us, and that is hit that like, subscribe, make a comment. So you never know. We might read some of your comments. We don't care if it's a good comment or a bad comment. We read them sometimes, right? Because we want to learn from everybody involved. On this edition of Conversation with the CEO, if you've been keeping up with us, I've been talking from a stock perspective, from an investment perspective. I've been talking about the podcasting world. My thoughts on the podcasting world is it's going to replace the Instagrams and the Facebooks of the world, right? You remember the transition some 10 years ago when Facebook was beginning to transition and become that thing. If you can go back far enough, you remember that a lot of people weren't on Facebook. It was just a college thing. They used it through college. And then eventually your business had to have it. See how that transformation happened?
You don't have to stop where you are. You don't have to stay where you started. There's no better time than now. There's no better person than you. So keep humble flexing. Hey guys, my name is OC Price. I'm the founder and owner of the Humble Flex brand, which is about overcoming odds and obstacles. I got the brand name from I remember reading this text that said the humble will always be exalted. And I was just like, that's really dope. I feel like many of us, especially in my generation, we're wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of energy on things that just not bringing life to us. Our mission here is just to uplift, inspire, and empower leaders. So if someone wears Humble Flex, they're definitely in their bag. They definitely know that they're walking in their purpose.
Well, I believe that the podcasting is that next thing because you see so many people individually representing themselves, and your personal brand is starting to matter. And so we're always looking at certain stocks in that area. But I ran into this company recently, reading some press releases, and had to get these guys on because I like what they're doing. They're really, in my opinion, again, I say this, we're not a financial advisor, but what we are is we're very good students of following the market. And when I think of what I'm saying about where podcasting is going from Wall Street's perspective, this company sits there as putting themselves in the position to really literally slam dunk that ball. And I'll be honest with you, because it's happening. A lot of people don't know it, but it's happening where people are putting bulbs in their ears and listening to, it's replacing radio, basically. Radio is on a decline. I come from radio, so I can talk about that. It's coming on a decline, and now people are listening to podcasts. They're listening to the Spotifys. They're even getting information from the Reddits and these type of places. So let's welcome him. He is the co-founder of SquadCast. His name is Rockwell Felder. I want to just call him The Rock. Why not? How you doing, man? Welcome, man.
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Like we see podcasters and content creators as the next wave of influencers. So couldn't agree with you more.
Man, and when you watch it from the Wall Street, because I'm watching Wall Street, right? I'm looking at the charts the entire time. So when I see little companies pop up, one of those companies that keeps popping up out of China is Lizzie. Lizi is the they do a lot of audio, like futuristic stuff that helps podcasting work. And there's a couple other few companies out there that they're taking care of the algorithms to make podcasters connect. And you fit right in that. You focus on the most important part, which is the sound quality, right? Like right now, we're using Zoom, right? But here's the thing. We know that's not the best in the world, right? But when we want to step up our game, at the end of the day, we're probably going to have to contact you guys and say, hey, we got to go through SquadCast because you guys have a system that makes sound better. Help walk me through that. How are you able to get such a great sound with your podcasting?
Yes, absolutely. So you're totally right. Like most of our customers at some point, they're professionals, whether they're like actually professional podcasters or someone like you who's a business owner looking to build authority, and a podcast is a great way to do that. But usually they realize the limitations of Zoom, which I'm not trying to bash Zoom. I think it's a wonderful tool, but it's really built for the purpose of like a video conference, video chat, where the difference with SquadCast is we are like a virtual cloud studio platform. So, the intention is for content creation in the highest quality, because we believe that not everybody has access to or can afford a studio or has the ability to meet with everybody in the same room. And this was, before the shelter in place stuff came into play, we felt like, what about that person in India that wants to interview someone in Japan? Like, how can we do that, but still give them that amazing quality? And so what we do is a little bit different than Zoom, where on Zoom, if you listen to or watch a Zoom video, you can kind of hear like hiccups or blips, or, sometimes the sound quality can get a little disruptive or disturbing. And with SquadCast, we're not really relying on the internet connection for the quality of the recording. For us, they're two separate things. So when you're on a SquadCast recording session, sure, if the internet, the internet isn't like a constant thing, it goes up and down. So that'll happen in real time. But however, those final recordings that you get, whether they're audio or video, are going to be crystal clear clean, because we're recording everything locally and then automatically uploading it to the cloud, just so you never have to worry about lost or damaged recordings. And as soon as you hit stop, your recording files will populate for you, and you can listen to them. You can watch them if you have a video recording plan. And again, what you see like in real time is not what you get, because it's my co-founder, Zach, likes to frame it as it's like organic produce. It's more important what we're not doing to the audio or video than what we are doing. We want to give folks that raw source quality file so that they can take it in their post-production process and edit it however they want, but they're not having to like fix anything. They're dealing with like quality, and then they take it from there. And then, they would edit it however they please.
Walk me through this, because I love the era that I grew up in, because I'm not necessarily learning through Google, right? I was, because I've Googled things that I myself wasn't experienced, and sometimes they don't lead to the same perspective, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to ask you is this: there was a time when Apple came on the scene, right, and record labels were having a struggle of what to do with that. Matter of fact, there was a company people could download free music. Do you remember the name of that company back in the day?
Are we talking about Napster?
Napster. There you go. So Napster came on the scene, and people could get free music, and the record labels had an issue with that, right? And they never could literally agree on anything. And so because they didn't agree, Napster went away legally because of the law, how the laws were set up. Record labels thought they had a victory when they really didn't. And so they were left in a place where Apple came along and they made it official. And that's where we started with what called the iPod.
Oh, yeah.
And then people began to download music that way legally and began to listen. And the record companies weren't really benefiting as much. Now, here's the thing. What's your opinion on, because I see this same transition with podcasting. It's coming off like radio stations didn't get in the game early enough to understand podcasting. So there's a war there, and they're trying to take space. And you guys become literally more important than the radio station itself. So tell me, walk me through that. What do you see in the transitioning of what podcasting is actually doing?
Hey, yo, something's going on over at our website. You want to go check it out. I promise you. Head to the linchpinbunchinc.com. We're doing something extra special. What we're excited to offer you is called the Everybody versus Wall Street package. Yes, it's going to have a new version of our audio book. It's also going to have a couple of videos. It's going to have information that we haven't shared, stuff that's important to investing that you're going to really, really appreciate. Here's what's cool about it. You get to pick your own price. You get to tell us what you want to pay for it, okay? Whatever you give us, we're going to give you access to it, all right? That's what we want to do. We want to sow into your life. We want to change your life. We want to make a difference here, okay? So we're excited. You're ready to start trading. You're ready to start investing. You're ready to start growing. So go ahead and take advantage of that right now. Pick your own price.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of podcasting, and that's why it was super easy to get excited about building a company that helps podcasters level up their quality and really interview anybody they want in the world by connecting on our platform remotely. But I do think that, like, I don't want to diss radio. I grew up listening to radio, so I think that's what made podcasting appealing for me. But I think it's just the next generation of that, where what I love about podcasting is it's on my time. And it's also like topics that I get to specifically seek out that you really wouldn't find it's not on TV. It's not on radio. Radio just has this different flow, and you got to kind of catch things in real time. I love the fact that the podcast is kind of on my time. I can start and stop it whenever I want. And, I use it to educate myself or entertain myself. But I can find specific topics that, like I said, you're not going to find anywhere else. So like I'm a big fan of like history podcasts. So like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History is a huge, one of my favorite shows. And, he totally just does whatever he wants. I love that about podcasting. And it's it's talking about topics and things that, you just wouldn't hear in the general type of media content. So I think that's what's really unique about it, is like there's no rules. It's still early days, even though it's been around for 10 years. I mean, when you compare it to radio, as far as like, how much money is in the space. So like using like ad revenue as an example, like radio still is way more dollars in the space when it comes to ads than podcasting. However, podcasting is rapidly growing. And like we were saying earlier, I do think it's this next wave of influencers. And I think more and more people are going to have a podcast, but what we're also seeing is companies are also having a podcast. Like all companies in some way are kind of becoming media companies a little bit, because they want to build connections with their audiences, expand their reach, and get folks to know the people behind these companies. And podcasting and video creation, like on YouTube, those are great ways to do it.
It was funny when you bring that up. It's like Roku it works opposite of what podcasting is doing. Like right, the businesses are going to come later. Right. But with Roku, the businesses were first. And now you got the individuals who are building TV companies for themselves and then putting them and uploading them on Roku. It's like that it's kind of hard to understand how the world's going now, because we're so accustomed to what we're accustomed to. What are you finding yourself making adjustments to, where you're getting like, you're going, okay, I thought this was going to happen, but let me readjust this. Wow, the behavior is completely different here. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're starting to realize is that like technology is leveling the playing field to allow anyone to be a creator. But whether these creators realize it or not, they're in competition with large media companies who have a lot of resources to, put into their show. But with technology like SquadCast, they can level up their quality. And quality is one of the things that we've seen is the best way to separate yourselves from the rest of the shows in your category. So we're really helping these independent creators create that. I mean, they're micro media companies essentially. And I think more folks in podcasting are starting to realize that now. When we first started, I think a lot of people, they hear podcasting, the barrier to entry is low, which it is. It totally is. And that's what I love about it. However, I think when folks hear that, they also equate it to being easy, which it certainly is not easy. I mean, you, again, are like a micro media company, and there's a lot of technology now that's really helping that and leveling the playing field. And so that's what's really exciting, is seeing independent creators figure it out and starting to get paid from their art. And I think that's what more of that needs to happen. You use an example of, Napster and how big of an issue that was for the music industry, and how, even with streaming and Spotify and all that, like it's helped out. Like they are getting compensated, but it does seem to be, still difficult for the indies. But, podcasts, they're free, right? So like, there is without a Napster. So I think like figuring out ways to get these creators paid is really something that, we're interested in at SquadCast, but I think all podcasting companies are, because, podcasting is a tough game, man. And it's a long game as well. It rewards consistency and persistence. But I think if you're approaching podcasting with this mindset of all I got to do is turn on a mic and talk and good things are going to happen. You might be setting yourself up for failure there, or at least just, being a little bit caught off guard with mismanaged expectations. So, but folks seem to be starting to realize that now. And I think there's all these different apps and companies like a Patreon, or even Apple and Spotify are starting to add subscriptions. So I do think that that's going to become more and more common, that folks will pay for content. And I think Patreon is one of the ways that really proved that to me. And that's what I foresee the space going, is just getting more and more of these creators paid, because it's a difficult thing. Podcasting is not easy, but it is incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, man, I love that information. Let's since what we do is for entrepreneurs, future CEOs, walk me down a path for a new small business, new CEO, got a company. Let's just say they got a bakery, and they deliver cakes in real time, branded for your special occasion. Where can they use a podcast to grow that business?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can talk about their business and use it as a way to expand their reach and get folks to know about them and build a relationship. I mean, it's a pretty, a lot of people talk about podcasting being intimate, but I like to think of it as like you're building connections that you really can't build in with other mediums. I mean, you're in these people's ears. And so I would think, either there's two ways that I think you can do it. I mean, there's multiple ways, but two come to mind, where it could be a solo show where it's just you talking about, if you're an expert in the space and want to continue to build authority and use it as like a marketing channel for your business. Having a solo show is a great way to do that. Or you can interview other experts in the space. Maybe they're other bakers, or, something that's kind of related. And, like we're doing here, just having a conversation about that would be interesting to your audience. And then the key is consistency, just continuing to release content. Doesn't have to be weekly, but at some, consistency usually is the best approach. It's not always the case. The Hardcore History show I just mentioned with Dan Carlin, he doesn't do that. He releases whenever he wants. They're like sometimes 6-hour episodes, sometimes 3. So, there's no rules necessarily, but there are some general things that we've seen to be work out for it, especially in this example, when you're trying to, build an audience, market your business, releasing content on a regular cadence. That usually yields the best results.
Are business owners waiting too long to get into this part of the business? Are they going to be at an advantage if they get into podcasting now, as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 more years from now? What are your thoughts? Is it a must have now? Because some things are starting to turn into a must have, right? You must have a Facebook page. You must have an Instagram page. That if you don't, then the people aren't going to necessarily think that you're really doing business. Am I correct, or am I wrong on that?
I think, well, you're definitely right about the social media stuff. I think, I feel like we're very close to that with podcasting, where I think a lot of people would say you absolutely need a podcast. But I'm thinking of the small business owner, and I just know how difficult it is and how many jobs there are to be done. You're working with minimal resources. So I don't want anybody out there to feel like, this is why my business isn't doing good, is because I don't have a podcast. Like, you again, like it is a, it's a lot that you're signing up for. So I would think that if you're in a position where you can, you have something to say and you can commit to a regular schedule, and, want to do this for the long run, not just for a month and see how it goes, but commit to it for like 2-3 years, then you should absolutely do it. I would say it's a must have, but if you're still just trying to figure it out in those early days, like, I have an incredible amount of empathy for people in those situations. And for us, we didn't have the capacity to do it, but now we have a team that helps us out. And so that makes it a lot more, hesitate to say easy, but it just it helps with the consistency a lot, having a team that can help us with the various steps and jobs to be done. So I think I think we're trending towards it is going to be required. But yeah, for the small business owner, I would say it depends on their situation and capacity.
So tell me this: when you first, because you guys been around a while, but when you first decided, hey, we're going to do this company called SquadCast, right? Mm-hmm. it was way before its time in a lot of ways. So you still have to believe in something when you don't really see what it is. You get what I'm saying? You gotta do that verification process. Like, I'm gonna walk out here on this limb with you, but you know what? I still got a foot back in land.
Right.
You know what I mean? To walk us through that for you, like, because, we try to inspire people because you're a testimony as far as I'm concerned. You're an example to inspire someone. So there are people they've got to walk that path that you walk, where you thought it was podcasting, you felt it was going to be great. There weren't any guarantees. Now, about years later, you have a bit of success. So how do you do it? How do you walk when you can't really understand exactly what you think is happening?
Yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for having a little bit of courage and just saying, just giving just believing in yourself. But for how it worked out for me. So I have an accounting and finance background. I was working at an accounting firm before jumping in full time to SquadCast, and I got exposed to a bunch of founders and executives and board members really early on in my career. And so it was like really inspired me to be like, well, maybe I could do something more independent and entrepreneurial. And so I started preparing myself for that. And then my co-founder, Zach, was kind of going on his own journey, similar to me. But I had no idea. Him and I are friends and have known each other since high school. And he one day approached me about the idea that became SquadCast. And I had already been a big fan of podcasting and was always wondering why more people weren't listening to podcasts, were listening rather, but a lot of people didn't even know what a podcast was. They didn't even know that it was on their iPhones, that they had this app with access to all this incredible content. And that used to blow my mind. I mean, these are like some so-called tech savvy people. So I always figured it was inevitable that podcasting would become more mainstream and more popular. So that was one part that made it really easy to get excited about with SquadCast, but also I think something that was really fortunate for Zach and I was we both got exposed to working remotely in our previous careers. So the combination of podcasting and remote collaboration, remote content creation, it just really hit home for me. And again, was extremely easy to get excited about. And I had already been looking for some type of opportunity to jump into like this. So what we did is just did our research on the space, see what folks were using. It was all over the place. Most folks were using Skype, or they were doing a bunch of other, like, for lack of a better term, like just duct taping it. Like it was a very manual process, a lot of putting a lot of pressure on the guest who isn't familiar with recording audio or video, especially remotely. So it was all over the place. And so we saw that it was a huge opportunity to build the professional virtual studio for these podcasters to help them scale their content creation, connect with anybody in the world, but also, have great quality. Because that was what was lacking, is you could tell it was recorded on Skype. It had this like Skypey sound. Zoom's a little bit better, but it still has the same limitations because of the way that they record is reliant on the internet connection, where with SquadCast, it's not. Yeah.
Wow. Man, let me ask you, so companies like Sirius, XM Sirius Radio, what do you think? Where do you see them coming into this? Because you obviously they probably might be a client already. So tell me, what are you noticing with companies like that establish the bar for being able to get, to me, they're the only ones that come to mind and gave you a chance to get the kind of information you wanted. Specifically,
you're right.
You can't get better than XM, right? So now we're in this next level. How are they starting to understand the podcasting world with what they have going on?
Yeah, they're definitely starting to embrace it. They made a ton of acquisitions last year in the podcasting space. So there's a podcast hosting platform called Simplecast, who we're big fans of and know a lot of the leadership and team there. They're under the Sirius XM umbrella, as well as like Stitcher, like a podcast listening app. And also they have some other original shows as well. So they spent almost $500 million, I think, in total on these podcast companies. So they're absolutely embracing it. And what we're seeing is radio stations in general are embracing podcasting too. And they're using SquadCast because even though they do have access to a physical recording studio, oftentimes the folks that they want to connect with are not able to meet them in studio, but with SquadCast, they're able to do it and still have amazing quality. But yeah, so radio companies and Sirius XM has certainly embraced podcasting. iHeart, that's where I think they're like the most popular podcasting place for podcasting now, at least, depending on what stats you're looking at. So I think they're embracing it, which is really cool, because I do think there was kind of this battle earlier on when I entered the space of, podcasters being like the newbies and kind of saying, bashing radio. Well, they didn't bash radio, but there was like a little bit of conflict, it feels less like that now. It feels more collaborative. It feels like radio's being embraced, but also the radio people realize, kind of like what you were saying, that, hey, podcasting is the future and we need to get in before we get left behind.
One of the people that I really do respect and give credit to in terms of radio guys who jumped in the podcast game, at least it seemed to me they did, is the Breakfast Club on
Yes.
iHeartRadio, Charlemagne the God and Angela Yee and those guys. They started on that. Like, you heard them talking about podcasts while they were on radio. Like, they hey, we said, hey, go over to the podcast and you can really hear this. Now that brings up a question that I want to ask you: regulation, right? You can say what you want on a podcast, but you cannot on the radio. There are limitations. Is there going to come a time that they're going to say, the FCC is going to say, wait a minute, you can't say what you want on these podcasts? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so. And I think it's just a sign that, again, even though podcasting has been around for over 10 years, it is still a relatively young industry. And I think examples like that you're showing are evidence of that. And so I do think that regulation is inevitable and is coming. And, to some degree, it is a little bit it is needed in podcasting, because I forget the exact name of the show, but it's happened a couple times where, folks are reporting on stuff and they have a podcast, and one of these podcasts was critically acclaimed. It won a Peabody Award and stuff like that. And it turns out it was a complete lie, but it was reported as the truth. Right. And it was a great show, but yeah, the person that they were interviewing, the show was built around, they were making it up. And so that got, found out. But so I think, we need to have some standards and some regulations so stuff like that can't happen. That's the downside of the Wild West.
Because you go down that rabbit hole. Podcasting can send you down a rabbit hole. It really can. And rabbit holes I don't think they're negative. Rabbit holes, because some of my best stuff I've ever found to change my life was in a rabbit hole. But I'll say, when it comes to podcasting, if you're looking for the content, you can find it. And sometimes people look for these lies. How can we protect that without too much over censorship and stressing the what makes podcasting amazing, right? Because if somebody's looking for, if you want to find someone who says, police are terrible, and they got a whole podcast about every time a police officer did something negative, right?
Right.
And that's all. And then you get all these people. See there, I told you, go listen to the How Bad the Police Are podcast, and they got 1 million listeners. But the truth is, it's still not true. But there's plenty of content to build a show on that. You get what I'm saying? How do we avoid those conflicts? Do you mean, because you're in this, you're part of building this brand of the podcasting world. So I want to hear from you.
That is a very good question. I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that, because I'm American, so I'm all about First Amendment free speech and stuff like that. And I'm not into censoring folks, but there is a balance and it can get risky. And unfortunately, there are going to be some folks that probably take advantage or abuse that. So it's probably something I need to educate myself on more, because I don't know exactly how radio does it, but I got to imagine something like that is probably what's coming for podcasting to some degree.
Okay.
But again, like I said, that's the downside of the Wild West is there's some things where no rules are great, but then that's one of the dark sides of that as well. And I think the transparency is a huge part, and that's what I love about podcasting is I think what I love about the industry is they seem to be learning from what happen in radio that they want different, or just tech in general. Like it's a very more inclusive industry for how young it is. And so I'm optimistic that, we'll do similar things of comparable industries, but hopefully a little bit better, because learning from those mistakes.
Oh man, I appreciate it. One more other concern, because I got you here, man. So I got to ask you these questions. I hope
Please
you don't
do.
mind. All right.
Of course not. This
I
is
hope
what
they're
I'm here
not too.
for.
I hope they're not too dumb questions per se. But
no, they're very thoughtful. I'm like, I love it.
No. So as podcasting is growing, right? Where do we go? It's on your phone. You download your app, right? So you've run into the issues with Google and the Android system, and then then Apple, with the iPhones, where they're starting to take apps off of phones, right? It happened with they were obviously doing it in China, but we know China's communist, so they can do what they want. But over here in America, right, you say we're taking that app down, so we're snatching the app, right? So how do we protect a podcast that grows and breaks records? Because it's happening one day. There's going to be someone who's going to have 50 million listeners at the turn of a button. And sometimes when a person gets that kind of influence, other things begin to happen. Hey, take that app off, and then you can't get it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And how do you build a podcast that's still protected in case Apple, Google, and the big boys say, well, you won't let us buy you? We offered you $7 billion and you turned us down. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, we'll just take you off. We'll take you out of our store. And how will people find you?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that could be a hit to folks, because the most common places that people are listening to podcasts is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts is starting to ramp up. Amazon's getting into the game, Facebook too. So I think those will continue to be, the lion's share of where the listeners are. But the beauty about podcasting is it is decentralized. Like you own your RSS feed, not these other companies. So if something like that did happen, there's still a way for you to have your show. Like they can't do it. Now, getting your audience to carry over, to some other platform. I mean, there's tons of listening apps other than those big tech companies that I mentioned. Overcast is a great one. Castbox, another that comes to mind. So, there is still hope. And I think that's the big difference between having a podcast versus a YouTube channel, where YouTube is great because so many people are on there. It's the second most popular search engine next to Google. So Google owns them both. And the ad model is already baked into the platform, where with podcasting, you got to kind of figure out the ads on your own. But if YouTube demonetizes you or censors your content, you're kind of screwed, because where are you going to go other than YouTube? Like there's not a lot of other options that have the same network effects. Whereas with a podcast, like if folks are, dedicated listeners and you have their ear, like you can tell them, hey, this is what happened. Come to my website and that's where you'll be able to find the podcast, or come over here and that's where you'll be able to find the podcast. So it's not like, not all hope is lost. It would be cause some challenges if one of those platforms kind of kicked you off, for lack of a better term, but you own that RSS feed, like you, not them. So there is still hope, and you can still have a show. And that's one of the big beauties of podcasting, is the decentralization, but it does add some other complexities where it puts a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but it makes the creators have to kind of figure some other things out, where like a centralized platform like YouTube, you don't necessarily have to do that.
How are you guys going to deal with it when one of those companies go, I like this company. I want to buy these guys. All right, how you guys going to deal? What is there a number that can make you walk away?
I mean, it'd have to be big. I think the opportunity is huge here. Most companies in our position do end up getting acquired at some point, but we see the opportunity that every person that creates a podcast or a YouTube channel and is going to do it remotely, they should be using something like SquadCast. And so that market opportunity is huge. So, I would never say never. And, I think we all got a number at some point, but that's not what we're thinking right now. We think the opportunity to have, people like you, no offense, but using SquadCast instead of Zoom. That's our opportunities, because most folks are still using Zoom. And I get it. Right. It's a great platform. They did a great job of getting their name out there. It is pretty reliable. It's just there are limitations because they're not focused on content creation like we are.
Right. And here's what's cool. That's what I like about what I'm doing, because, I find you because of what I'm doing. And I'm meeting more interesting individuals, and it does lead to this. And as we grow, we're going to make those moves. I mean, I didn't personally start this because I thought it was going to necessarily grow. I'm talking to what I believe is a small group, and I want to ask you a question about that, because I'm speaking to a small group. It's kind of like the side of my business, right? My main business is my main business, but this gives me an opportunity to share the things that I'm learning as a business owner, and giving me perspective, so I can ask someone like you a question that maybe someone else wouldn't ask, because I'm thinking about things in a completely different way. So man, when I say y'all company, like, I know you're going to get an offer to get bought. You just you fit where it is. It's the way podcasting is going. And again, when you look at the stock market and what's moving and where the money's being invested in, the acquisitions that you're noticing, right? That's kind of like a heads up about it, right? And remote podcasting is going to be the most important piece, because it's all about time now, time and speed, right? Again, you can't get on a plane and fly over there and be in the studio with me. That guy would have already got that interview. So if it's a breaking interview, right? It used to be like the channels used to fight over it. Did NBC get it before CBS? Now it's about whose podcast got it before the other. Now, I'm not a big fan of 6ix9ine. I'm not, but Spotify got an exclusive through one of their exclusive podcasts to do an interview with 6ix9ine talking to Whack 100. Now, for that world, that's huge news.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying? And the podcast got it first over what we used to go, like, remember when Michael Jackson got in trouble, right? It's CBS or ABC. They got the first critical interview. Those are I'm ranting on.
No, you're talking some good stuff.
I'm just excited about what I'm seeing and what I'm learning. And it's one of those things. Your company, I had to talk to you because I want to hear, what are you noticing? Especially for business owners, right? You already said it. Business owners are going to eventually need to learn how to use this product. So, give us some predictions over the next 10 years. Give us some predictions of how you think companies and businesses and small business owners and entrepreneurs and artists are going to use podcasts to do what?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on something that I want to talk about, because in addition to some of the benefits of podcasting and building an audience and building connections with these folks, also, like, if you're interviewing people, like, we're having a conversation today, that's also expanding your network and building relationships too. And what we found is, like, sometimes getting people to come on your podcast is easier than trying to get their time for coffee. And it's been amazing to see that. And that's another benefit that I don't think is as obvious as folks like trying to expand their audience approach. But to get back to your question, I think, pretty much every business, large and small, will have some type of media that they'll be creating, whether it's a podcast, YouTube, blogs, all of them. I think that's going to become more and more common. And I think, like we talked about earlier, that like podcaster is going to be that next wave of influencer. I think kids are already starting to grow up they're not wanting to be firemen and policemen anymore. Unfortunately, they want to be YouTubers and podcasters and TikTokers. And so I think that's more and more what we're going to see.
Oh, I'm about to hit you with one. Let's go here. Yeah.
All right.
Let's go. So my daughter is in love with Roblox. Cardi B just tweeted, "I'm not going to lose my money buying cars, jewelry, and all that kind of stuff." What she said was, "I'm going to lose my money to Roblox." Now, she said, because her kids love it.
Yeah.
My daughter's the same way. She loves Roblox. So let's go. I want to go into the metaverse world where you fit in. When you think metaverse and the virtualness of the people in this world, playing these games and the Bitcoin tie and the blockchain tie. Sound matters. So to me, you're the portable version of the podcast merging with metaverse, with the Roblox of the world, right? Because the sound on Roblox isn't great,
right?
But they're talking, right? They, you know, I mean, walk me through that, because that's where I see you guys. I see you guys in the metaverse world, where on Roblox, the next level, where podcasting will be a part of Roblox. Will be a part of the metaverse.
I'll have to make sure our engineers listen to this part of the conversation, because I think this will spur some ideas for them. But yeah, it's a little further out, but I could totally see the virtual studio being an actual virtual VR type of studio where, you're remote, but you're still feeling like you're in the same person. And that's what we're trying to do with SquadCast. We're trying to make a remote conversation, remote content creation closer to reality, as close to reality as possible. So yeah, if we can get into the metaverse and utilize some VR to, where folks actually do feel like they're in the same room, that would be incredible. But we're not there yet, and it's going to take some time.
My daughter put me ahead of that game. It's just, I see how it impacts her. I'm like, when I was a kid, I didn't care. Not only does she love Roblox, she loves to watch other people play it.
Isn't that fascinating?
And she likes to hear their conversation while they're playing the game. And she talks to the TV, even though they can't hear her. She talks, like, I literally had her like, that guy can't hear you, right? I don't care. I was trying to tell him which way to go. He needs to listen to me. Like, and she's 7 now. She's 7 years old doing this. You get what I'm saying? So the impact of this product and the level of what it is just, there's so many opportunities in that virtual world that I just think, maybe I'm too far down the road. I've always been too far down the road, so I apologize.
Hey, but good for you. I like that.
But it just, if you look at the kids tell you what's next.
Yeah, well, I've read stuff on how I think you sound like you're like this. I feel like I'm like this, where the so-called analog world, that's like our real world, and technology is a break from the analog world, where it's kind of flipped with people like your daughter, where their real world is the virtual world, and analog, dealing with you and me in real person, like and looking at the sun and stuff, that's a break from their real virtual world. So it's tough to get my mind around, but that is where we're going probably.
Oh, that's right. That is something. All right. So let me ask you a few questions about, I've got some young people, they want to build a company just like you.
Yeah.
What's some advice you would give them?
I think, if you want to start a business, like I think if you have any ambition to start a business, I think everybody should at least try. I think there's some powerful things in just trying and learning. And for me, like it was a huge, I just wanted to check a what if off of my list, so to speak, where what if I started a business? I just wanted to check that off, because it was always something that was lingering in my mind. And so I'm grateful that like I've done that, and, whether it succeeds or fails or whatever, like at least I don't have that lingering question of like feeling like I didn't give my shot at something that I wanted to do. So if you have any passion to do that, even if it's a podcast, same thing, you should absolutely give yourself a chance, do it. However, I do also think that like giving yourself time to like build up your skills and confidence is a huge part of this as well. So I started SquadCast when I was like, I think 27, 28, which is, still relatively young, but I think had I started it earlier, I wouldn't have been mature or confident or, as consistent with what the demands of the job requires. I think I needed to build up my skills at that accounting firm, build up my confidence, engaging with different business folks, building up my business acumen, because now, although I'm doing a ton of things that I've never done before, and I'm having to learn things on the go and apply what I learned like immediately, I still rely a lot on my previous training from that other job that was, very demanding and put me in, really built up my skills. So I think there's some value to that too. Like, if you don't necessarily have to do it like today, I do think that it is important to, again, just build up those skills. And what I've heard is like, I saw this tweet the other day, and it really hit home for me. The lady said like, the average age of a successful startup CEO is like in their 40s, mid 40s. So like, go easy on yourself, founders. And that hit home for me because, now I'm 33 and I'm just like, there's just times where you just kind of doubt creeps in a little bit. There's a lot of uncertainty and just risk. And it is a real roller coaster. Like every day, minute to minute my emotions can change, good to bad, to ugly, to amazing, back to amazing. So knowing just how to weather that is pretty challenging. But I think because I have like built up this confidence, like that's keeping me courageous to just keep on going and knowing that I'll figure it out some way. We'll figure it out. We're building a great team. So it's not just me.
That's some great stuff, man. I like it. You mentioned emotion and I always tell people this, you can't get control of your emotions if you don't really even know what an emotion is, right? Confusion is not an emotion. Emotion is anxiety, worrying about the outcome, whether it's a good or bad outcome, it's still anxiety. You want to avoid that. Number two is anger, right? The ability to when someone upsets you, still keep your composure. That's very necessary because if you get angry, that means you can't control your emotion as well. And then the other one is depression. Depression is an emotion. And the reason why we get depressed is because we're not surrounded by the right team players. So to get control of that, you got to have a solid team of positive people who will remind you, man, shake yourself out of this and let's roll, but man, dude, you have really I'm so glad we found you, man. It's, well,
thank you.
What you're doing, man, it's exciting. We like it, and we're going to be following you, and eventually, I'm almost definitely sure we're going to be a client. And we're going to just keep trying to learn from you guys and keep getting this information out to the people. In closing, I got one last question, and then you can let people know how they can reach you or how to get in contact with you, how to get themselves on your platform.
Sure.
My question is this. When it comes to podcasting, this slipped me earlier. when it comes to podcasting, in terms of the audience, does it really matter? Can a podcast be successful with 400 listeners as opposed to 1 million listeners? Is there a difference? Does it really matter?
I absolutely think it does matter because if you have 400 really engaged people, that's amazing. And the mental model I like to share with folks is imagine those 400 people in a room listening to you speak. That would be incredible. You would absolutely, I would think, be happy with that. Would you want 1 million or more? Okay, probably too. But there's still, you can have a successful show and not have, that $1 million million listeners. Sorry. And we've seen that time and time again, where we just have shows that have really engaged audiences because they're doing something unique and different, and they're build real connections with their audience. And so, yeah, you don't need 1 million to have a successful show. You don't need a million to monetize your show. If you do want to go the ads route, the numbers do matter a little bit more, but even then you don't need to have 1 million to make money from your show. And what we've seen a lot of folks do is monetize in other unique ways. There's a podcast called A Bar Above that's for premium bartenders, talking about the latest and greatest trends in bartending. And what they started doing is selling premium bartending tools, because that they realized from their audience that was a hole in the game, a hole in the market, and started using the podcast to, talk about the topics, but then also to talk about these products. And so that's really helped them be successful. Another show that comes to mind is the Sleep With Me podcast, who the host is a good friend of ours. And that show is all about making people go to sleep. The host, he has, what's the word when you can't go to sleep?
No, not schizophrenia. But I can't think of it, man. You
I know, I'm blanking
that
too. I was gonna say something else, and it's not that word. But anyways, he would have trouble sleeping, and so he created a podcast that's so boring that help him go to sleep, and it helps all these other people go to sleep, and it's extremely successful. And he does live shows, and that's another way that he monetizes the show. So there's incredible amounts of opportunity, and that's what's so exciting is we have this insight and get to help creators, realize their dreams and build influence and, start to, build a career out of this. And so I think, just that's the goal. It's just fostering and helping more of that happen. And I think that is what's going to happen in the next 10 years.
I love it. And think about this. When you advertise on a thing like a podcast like this or any other podcast, once you're on there forever. And, Shirley Caesar, she's a gospel singer, by the way. And she had a video out. This happened not too long ago, but the beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes, they took a YouTube clip and they turned it into a hit song, which brought attention back to that, which got views, right? Once you're on this platform and you bought that time, it's always there. Right. And I don't know, you tell me, seems like over time, the material gets better. Like stuff that
100%.
Might have been recorded, 3 years ago, people are just now finding out about it.
100%. And I mean, I think that's one of the things that is helpful for podcasters is like, you're going to get better at this. Like most people that come into podcasting, their show's not successful because they're good at podcasting. It's because they're bringing some other type of unique perspective or experience or point of view that's, really interesting. And then they get better at the craft of podcasting just by doing it. But most folks are not going to like the sound of their voice at first. They're not going to like their first episode, but getting it out, like creating the content is the best way for you to hone your craft and just get better. And like I said, it rewards consistency and persistence, and magical things will happen if you just give yourself that chance. But it is not like most of the time, it's not going to be like an overnight success. I mean, even folks like Joe Rogan, he has been doing it for 13 years. So like it's, but now it just seems like, oh, he's just talking in front of a mic. I could do that. And it's like, but there was a lot more that went into getting better at being a performer, about being a conversationalist. So those are all skills that you'll pick up, but you got to just do it.
Amen. Rock, I appreciate you, man. He is the co-founder of SquadCast. He spent some time here with us. And man, hey, thank you again. How can people reach you now if they want to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so the best way to contact me, I'm pretty active on Twitter and LinkedIn, or I shouldn't say active, but accessible on Twitter and LinkedIn. So name is Rockwell Felder, so pretty simple there. If you want to learn more about SquadCast, we're very engaged and have a really amazing community. So head over to squadcast.fm. You can learn more about the product, but we have a ton of resources on podcasting, specifically remote podcasting. We just want to help folks get better. We know that this is a relatively new thing, and a lot of folks, don't understand exactly how to do it. So we can help you with that. And it is actually easier, but it just takes just takes a little bit of education to help out. And then to reach us on social, we're also very active, and that's at SquadCast FM.
All right, David. Thanks again for your time. That wraps up this episode of Conversation with a CEO. As always, whatever you do, learn. That's our whole goal. We just want to help you learn. We want to give you that one piece of information, right? A lot of people's lives change because of one piece of information. And if we hear it during today's broadcast, we're thankful. But make sure you're trying to learn, because when you don't learn, you don't grow. And when you don't grow, you die.